The morning sun cast long shadows through the stained glass windows of Valdoria Castle. Princess Elena stood before her mirror, adjusting the sapphire necklace that had belonged to her mother. Her lady's maid, Sarah, carefully placed the silver tiara upon Elena's dark hair. "Your Highness looks radiant today," Sarah said softly. Elena smiled, but worry clouded her eyes. "Thank you, Sarah. Though I fear Queen Margot will find fault with something, as she always does." The relationship between Elena and her mother-in-law had been strained from the beginning. Queen Margot had ruled Valdoria with an iron fist since her husband's death 10 years ago. She had expected her son, Prince Alexander, to marry someone of her choosing, preferably Princess Isabel from the neighboring kingdom of Ravencia. Instead, Alexander had fallen deeply in love with Elena, a duke's daughter with no royal blood. Their wedding 3 years ago had been the most beautiful ceremony the kingdom had seen in decades. The people loved Elena for her kindness and genuine care for their welfare. She visited orphanages, helped establish new schools, and personally ensured that the kingdom's poorest families received food during harsh winters. This popularity, however, only deepened Queen Margot's resentment. In the throne room, Queen Margot sat rigid on her golden chair, her gray hair pulled back severely, emphasizing her sharp features. Her cold blue eyes surveyed the courtiers gathered for the morning assembly. Lord Blackwood, her most trusted adviser, stood at her right hand, whispering something that made her lips curve into a cruel smile. "Where is the princess?" Queen Margot's voice cut through the murmur of conversations. "Late again, I see." Just then, Elena entered the throne room with grace and dignity. She wore a deep blue gown that complemented her complexion perfectly. Prince Alexander, who had been speaking with the captain of the guard, immediately moved to his wife's side. His protective gesture did not go unnoticed by his mother. "Your Majesty," Elena curtsied deeply. "I apologize for my tardiness. I was attending to young Thomas in the servants' quarters. He fell ill during the night, and I wanted to ensure the physician had seen to him." Several courtiers exchanged approving glances. This was exactly why they loved their princess. She cared about everyone in the castle, from the highest noble to the lowest servant. Queen Margot's eyes narrowed dangerously. "A princess does not belong in the servants' quarters. How many times must I tell you this? You bring shame upon the royal family with such behavior." Alexander stepped forward. "Mother, Elena's compassion is one of her greatest qualities. The people love her for it." "The people's love is fickle," Queen Margot snapped. "What matters is maintaining proper royal dignity and protocol." Elena felt the familiar sting of her mother-in-law's criticism, but maintained her composure. "I understand your concern, Your Majesty. However, I believe showing kindness to all our subjects strengthens the crown's relationship with the people." Lord Blackwood leaned toward the Queen and whispered again. His dark eyes glinted with malice as he watched Elena. He had his own reasons for wanting the princess gone. With her influence over Alexander growing stronger each day, his own power in court was diminishing. "Speaking of the crown's relationship with the people," Queen Margot said, her voice dangerously sweet, "I've heard disturbing reports about your recent activities, Elena." The throne room fell silent. Everyone sensed the tension crackling in the air like lightning before a storm. "What reports, Your Majesty?" Elena asked, though her heart began to race. "Reports that you've been meeting secretly with merchants and commoners, making promises about reducing their taxes without royal approval. Reports that you've been questioning my decisions in front of the council. Reports that you've been building your own power base, separate from the crown's authority." Each accusation hit Elena like a physical blow. Yes, she had met with merchants, but only to understand their struggles better. Yes, she had voiced concerns in council meetings, but only when she felt policies would harm the people. Yes, people looked to her for help, but she had never acted against the crown's authority. "Your Majesty, I can explain," Elena began. "Silence!" Queen Margot rose from her throne, her royal robes billowing around her. "I have tolerated your peasant ways long enough. You forget that you are here only because my son chose to marry beneath his station." Alexander's jaw clenched, his hand instinctively moving to the sword at his side. "Mother, you go too far. Elena is my wife and your daughter-in-law. She deserves respect." "Respect is earned, not given," Queen Margot retorted. "And your wife has done nothing but undermine my authority since the day she entered this castle." Lady Catherine, one of Elena's few friends at court, stepped forward bravely. "Your Majesty, if I may speak, Princess Elena has only ever acted with the kingdom's best interests at heart. The people's lives have improved because of her initiatives." Queen Margot's gaze turned icy as it fixed on Lady Catherine. "And you would know about the people's lives, would you? Another one of Elena's conspirators, no doubt." Lord Blackwood seized this opportunity. "Your Majesty, perhaps it would be wise to investigate these connections more thoroughly. If the princess has indeed been building a network to undermine your rule—" "Yes," Queen Margot said slowly, a terrible plan forming in her mind. "Yes, I think an investigation is exactly what we need." Elena felt the walls closing in around her. She knew that any investigation led by Lord Blackwood would find evidence of treason, whether it existed or not. He was master at twisting innocent actions into sinister plots. That evening, Elena sat in her private chambers with Alexander. The prince paced back and forth, his agitation evident in every movement. "She's planning something," Alexander said. "I know my mother. That look in her eyes today. She means to move against you." Elena reached out and took his hand, stilling his restless movement. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together. I won't let her drive a wedge between us." Alexander knelt before his wife, taking both her hands in his. "I would give up my crown before I let any harm come to you. You know that, don't you?" "I do," Elena whispered, tears threatening to spill. "But Valdoria needs you. The people need a just ruler, and that will never be your mother or Lord Blackwood." Their tender moment was interrupted by urgent knocking. Sarah burst in, her face pale with fear. "Your Highnesses, forgive the intrusion, but I had to warn you. I overheard Lord Blackwood speaking with the Queen's personal guards. They're planning something for tomorrow's feast." Alexander jumped to his feet. "What did you hear exactly?" Sarah wrung her hands nervously. "Lord Blackwood mentioned that evidence would be discovered during the feast. He said that by tomorrow night, the peasant princess would be in chains." Elena's blood ran cold. A feast meant the entire court would be present. Whatever Margot planned, she intended it to be public and humiliating. "We should leave tonight," Alexander said immediately. "I'll arrange for horses." "No," Elena interrupted firmly. "If we run, it will look like an admission of guilt. Whatever false evidence they've manufactured, we must face it with truth and dignity." Alexander pulled his wife into his arms. "You're braver than any knight I've ever known. But I won't let them take you. I swear it on my father's grave." The next day dawned gray and oppressive. Storm clouds gathered over Valdoria Castle, matching the mood within its walls. Servants scurried about, preparing for the evening's feast, but there was no joy in their preparations. Word had spread that something terrible was brewing. Elena spent the morning visiting the castle's chapel. Father Benedict, the elderly priest who had married her and Alexander, found her kneeling before the altar. "My child," he said gently, "God sees the truth in your heart. No false accusation can stand against divine justice." "I'm not afraid for myself, Father," Elena replied, "but I fear what this will do to Alexander, to the kingdom. Queen Margot's hatred of me is poisoning everything." Father Benedict placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. Sometimes the darkest hour comes just before dawn. Have faith, Princess. You have more allies than you know. Indeed, throughout the castle, people were whispering. Servants who had benefited from Elena's kindness, guards whose families had received aid during difficult times, nobles who had seen the positive changes she had brought, all were deeply troubled by the rumors of what was to come. In her tower room, Queen Margot met with Lord Blackwood for final preparations. The Lord produced a leather pouch, smiling coldly. "The letters are perfect forgeries, Your Majesty. They appear to show Princess Elena corresponding with Ravencia's enemies, offering to support their claim to disputed border territories in exchange for military support against you." Queen Margot examined the documents with satisfaction. "Excellent. And the witness?" "A merchant named Roderick will testify that he carried these messages. He's been well paid and knows what will happen to his family if he fails to play his part convincingly." "Good. Tonight my son will finally see his wife for what she truly is, a treacherous social climber who sought to steal his throne." As afternoon faded into evening, the great hall filled with nobles dressed in their finest attire. Long tables groaned under the weight of elaborate dishes, but few had any appetite. The tension in the air was palpable. Elena entered on Alexander's arm, wearing a gown of pure white, a deliberate choice to symbolize her innocence. Her head was held high, though she could feel hostile stares from Queen Margot's supporters. The Queen herself sat at the high table, Lord Blackwood at her side. She wore black, as if already in mourning for the daughter-in-law she was about to destroy. As the feast progressed, Elena noticed several unfamiliar guards positioned around the hall. They wore the Queen's personal colors rather than the standard Royal Guard uniform. Her unease grew with each passing moment. Finally, as the main course was cleared away, Queen Margot rose to her feet, striking her goblet with a knife to demand silence. "Lords and ladies of Valdoria," she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall, "it grieves me deeply to bring troubling news on what should be a joyous occasion. But the security of our realm must come before personal feelings." Alexander's hand found Elena's under the table, gripping it tightly. "Evidence has come to light," Queen Margot continued, "of a most heinous betrayal. Lord Blackwood, present your findings." Lord Blackwood stood, producing the forged letters with theatrical gravity. "These documents were intercepted yesterday. They reveal a conspiracy most foul, correspondence between someone in this very castle and our enemies, offering to betray Valdoria's defenses in exchange for military support to usurp the throne." Gasps echoed through the hall. Elena felt Alexander tense beside her, ready to spring to his feet, but she pressed his hand, urging him to wait. "The handwriting has been verified," Lord Blackwood lied smoothly. "And we have a witness who carried these treasonous messages. Bring in the merchant." The doors opened, and a thin, nervous-looking man was escorted in by guards. His eyes darted around the room before fixing on the floor. "Tell us what you told me," Lord Blackwood commanded. The merchant, Roderick, swallowed hard. He began to speak in a rehearsed monotone about carrying messages between the castle and enemy agents. But as he spoke, his voice faltered. He caught sight of Elena's face, open, honest, kind even now, and something in him cracked. I was told to say," he stammered, then suddenly fell to his knees. "Forgive me, they threatened my children. These letters, I've never seen them before yesterday when Lord Blackwood—" "Silence!" Queen Margot shrieked, but the damage was done. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Lord Blackwood moved quickly to salvage the situation. "The man is clearly trying to protect his accomplice. The evidence speaks for itself. The handwriting matches Princess Elena's perfectly." "Then examine my real letters," Elena said, rising gracefully to her feet. Her clear voice carried across the hall. Compare them side by side. Bring my correspondence with the orphanage, with the merchant guild about fair prices, with anyone. Let the court see the truth. There's no need for such theatrics, Queen Margot said coldly. The evidence is clear. Guards, arrest the Princess Elena on charges of high treason. The Queen's personal guards began moving toward Elena, hands on their swords. The regular castle guards looked confused, torn between their duty and their loyalty to the beloved princess. Alexander shot to his feet, his chair crashing backward. "You will not touch her!" "Stand aside, my son," Queen Margot commanded. "Your judgment has been clouded by this woman's deceptions." "The only deception here is yours, mother." Alexander's voice rang with fury. "This is a sham, and everyone knows it." Captain Morris of the regular guard stepped forward. "Your Majesty, perhaps we should examine all evidence thoroughly before—" "Silence!" Queen Margot screamed. "I am your queen! You will obey! Arrest her now!" The Queen's guards moved closer. Elena stood tall, refusing to show fear even as her heart raced. She could see the conflict in the faces around her. Nobles who knew this was wrong, but feared to speak. Servants pressing against the walls with tears in their eyes. Guards unwilling to act against a princess they knew to be innocent. "Stop!" Lady Catherine pushed through the crowd. "This is madness! Princess Elena has done nothing but good for this kingdom!" "Arrest her too!" Queen Margot ordered. "All who stand with the traitor will share her fate!" More voices rose in protest. Lord Edmund, an elderly noble respected by all, stood shakily. "Your Majesty, this is not justice. This is vengeance, and it will tear Valdoria apart." "How dare you question me?" The situation spiraled toward chaos. The Queen's guards pressed forward while the regular guards hesitated. Nobles began choosing sides, some moving to stand near Elena and Alexander, others backing away in fear. "Mother, stop this madness!" Alexander drew himself up to his full height, every inch the future king. "If you proceed with this injustice, you will have to arrest me as well, for I will never abandon my wife." "Then you are no son of mine." Queen Margot's face contorted with rage. "Guards, arrest them both. The prince consorts with traitors." This was too much even for some of Queen Margot's supporters. Arresting the crown prince. It was unthinkable. As the guards approached, Alexander's hand went to his sword. "I said you will not touch her." "Alexander?" "No," Elena whispered urgently. "Don't give them an excuse to—" But the guards were already too close. One reached for Elena's arm, and Alexander snapped. Years of training took over as he drew his sword in one fluid motion, the steel singing as it cleared the scabbard. "Stand back!" he roared, moving protectively in front of Elena. "I am your prince, and I command you to stand down!" The sight of the crowned prince with drawn sword caused an uproar. Some nobles cried out in alarm, others in support. The regular guards looked to Captain Morris, clearly unwilling to act against their prince. "You draw steel in my presence?" Queen Margot's voice rose to a shriek. "You choose this peasant over your own mother? Guards, subdue the prince! Use whatever force necessary!" The Queen's personal guards advanced with drawn swords. Alexander stood ready, his blade steady despite the tears in his eyes. He had never imagined it would come to this, facing his mother's soldiers to protect the woman he loved. "Please," Elena stepped beside her husband, addressing the advancing guards. "Think about what you're doing. Is this the Valdoria you want to serve? A kingdom where false evidence and personal vendettas rule over justice?" Some guards hesitated, but Lord Blackwood barked, "10 gold pieces to the man who takes them. 20 if the princess is damaged in the struggle." This blatant call for violence shocked even hardened soldiers. Captain Morris had heard enough. "Royal Guard, form up around the prince and princess. No one acts against them without proper trial and evidence." The regular guards immediately moved to obey their captain, creating a protective circle around Alexander and Elena. The two groups of soldiers faced each other across the great hall, tension crackling between them. Queen Margot's face turned purple with rage. "Treason! This is treason! You all conspire against your rightful queen!" Father Benedict, who had been watching from the side, stepped forward. His aged voice carried surprising strength. "Your Majesty, I beg you to reconsider. This path leads only to civil war. Would you have brother fight brother over false accusations?" "You too, priest?" Queen Margot laughed bitterly. "Has she corrupted even the church?" "The only corruption here stems from hatred and jealousy," Father Benedict replied calmly. "Princess Elena's only crime has been loving your son and serving this kingdom with her whole heart." The standoff continued, neither side willing to make the first move toward violence. In that tense moment, a young page boy suddenly ran into the hall, not realizing the danger he was entering. "Message for the Queen!" he called out, then froze as he saw the drawn swords and hostile faces. "What message?" Queen Margot demanded, grateful for any distraction that might help her regain control. The boy stammered, "Your Majesty, riders from the border. Our Revencia is mobilizing troops. They say if Princess Elena is harmed, they will consider it an act of war. King Marcus says she is under his protection as the rightful future queen of Valdoria." This news stunned everyone. Elena looked as shocked as anyone. She had no connection to Revencia beyond the fact that Queen Margot had wanted Alexander to marry their princess. Lord Blackwood paled. "This proves the conspiracy. She must have made a deal." "Or," Lord Edmund interrupted, "King Marcus simply recognizes what we all know, that Princess Elena will one day be our queen, and attacking her would destabilize the entire region. Only a fool would want chaos on their border." Queen Margot stood frozen, her carefully laid plans crumbling. If Revencia intervened, Valdoria could face war. Even in her rage, she wasn't prepared for that consequence. Alexander seized the moment. "Mother, this has gone far enough. Withdraw your guards and your false accusations. Let us resolve this peacefully before blood is shed." "Never!" Queen Margot hissed. "I will not be dictated to by foreign kings or ungrateful sons." At that moment, Merchant Roderick found his courage again. "I'll tell the truth," he shouted. "Lord Blackwood paid me to lie. He threatened my family. The princess never wrote those letters. I've never even spoken to her before today." His confession broke the dam. Other voices rose, servants testifying to Elena's kindness, guards confirming they'd never seen her act suspiciously, nobles admitting they'd been pressured to stay silent. Lord Blackwood tried to flee but found his path blocked by angry courtiers. The tide had turned decisively against the Queen and her advisor. Still, Queen Margot stood defiant, though her power crumbled around her. "You fools! You choose this nobody over your rightful queen. You will all pay for this betrayal." "The only betrayal here is yours, Mother," Alexander said sadly, finally lowering his sword. "Betrayal of justice, of family, of everything Father stood for. He would be ashamed to see what you've become." Those words hit Queen Margot harder than any blade could have. She staggered, her face crumbling from rage into something almost like grief. For a moment, the hall saw not a tyrant, but a bitter woman who had let hatred poison her heart. "Your Majesty," Elena stepped forward, her voice gentle despite everything. "It doesn't have to end like this. We can still be a family. I never wanted to be your enemy." Queen Margot looked at her daughter-in-law with a mixture of hatred and something that might have been regret. Then her face hardened again. "Guards, to me," she commanded her personal soldiers. "We withdraw for now." As she swept from the hall with her remaining supporters, Lord Blackwood in custody, the tension finally broke. People rushed forward to surround Alexander and Elena. voices raised in support and relief. Captain Morris approached and bowed deeply. "Your Highness, the Royal Guard stands with you and the Princess. We await your orders." Alexander sheathed his sword and pulled Elena close. "Thank you, Captain. Please ensure Lord Blackwood is secured until we can properly investigate his crimes. And send word to King Marcus that Princess Elena is safe and that Valdoria seeks continued peace with Ravencia." As order slowly returned to the Great Hall, Elena felt the weight of what had just occurred. The confrontation with Queen Margot had been more dramatic and dangerous than she could have imagined, but they had survived, and truth had prevailed. "It's not over," Alexander whispered to her. "Mother won't give up so easily." "I know," Elena replied, "but at least now everyone has seen her true nature. She can no longer hide behind false righteousness." Lady Catherine approached, tears streaming down her face. "Your Highness, that was the bravest thing I've ever witnessed, standing up to the Queen like that." "We all stood up to her," Elena said firmly. "Every person who spoke the truth tonight, every guard who chose justice over blind obedience. This is what Valdoria should be, a kingdom where truth matters more than power." As the night wore on, the failed arrest became the catalyst for change. Nobles who had long chafed under Queen Margot's tyrannical rule began to speak openly about the need for reform. The revelation of Lord Blackwood's schemes prompted calls for a full investigation into other injustices committed in the Queen's name. In her tower room, Queen Margot sat alone, staring at a portrait of her late husband. Lord Blackwood was imprisoned, her supporters scattered, her authority in tatters. She had gambled everything on destroying Elena and had lost catastrophically. "You always said I was too harsh," she whispered to the painting. "Too quick to see enemies where there were none. But I was so certain she was a threat." A knock at her door interrupted her brooding. She expected a servant, but instead, Father Benedict entered. "Your Majesty," he said gently, "I've come to offer counsel if you'll accept it." "Come to gloat, priest?" "Never. I come because I remember the woman you were before grief and fear hardened your heart. It's not too late to change course." Queen Margot laughed bitterly. "After tonight, they'll demand my abdication. My own son drew his sword against me." "To protect his innocent wife from false accusations," Father Benedict corrected. "Your Majesty, you still have a choice. You can continue down this path of hatred, or you can seek reconciliation. Princess Elena has a forgiving heart. She would accept your apology if it were genuine." "Apologize? To her?" The Queen's pride flared, then dimmed. "Even if I wanted to, how could I? After everything I've done, everything I've said?" "With humility," the priest said simply. "The same humility we all must show before God. Pride has been your downfall, Your Majesty. Let humility be your redemption." After Father Benedict left, Queen Margot sat in silence for hours, wrestling with emotions she had long suppressed. The portrait of her husband seemed to watch her with sad, knowing eyes. Meanwhile, in their chambers, Alexander and Elena finally had a moment of privacy. The prince held his wife as if he might never let go. "When I saw those guards reaching for you," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "I've never been so terrified in my life. I meant what I said. I would give up everything before I let them harm you." "And I would never ask that of you," Elena replied, touching his face gently. "Valdoria needs you, now more than ever. Your mother's actions have created chaos. The kingdom will look to you for leadership." "Then they'll be looking to both of us," Alexander said firmly. "You've proven tonight that you're already a queen in all but name. The people love you, the guards respect you, even our enemies in Ravencia recognize your importance." Elena smiled sadly. "But your mother still lives. She still has supporters. This conflict isn't over." "No," Alexander agreed. but tonight showed that truth and justice can prevail over lies and tyranny. We'll face whatever comes next together. As dawn approached, bringing an end to one of the most dramatic nights in Valdoria's history, the castle settled into an uneasy peace. The failed arrest had exposed deep divisions in the kingdom, but it had also revealed the strength of those who stood for justice. In the servants' quarters, in the guard barracks, in noble houses throughout the capital, people spoke in hushed tones about what they had witnessed. A prince who would draw his sword to defend his wife, a princess who faced false accusations with dignity and grace, a queen whose hatred had nearly torn the kingdom apart. The story of that night would be told and retold, growing into legend. But for now, as the first light of dawn touched the castle towers, Valdoria held its breath, waiting to see what would come next in this struggle between love and hatred, between justice and tyranny, between the past and the future. 3 days had passed since the dramatic confrontation in the Great Hall. The castle remained tense, with guards patrolling in doubled numbers and servants whispering in corners. Queen Margot had not been seen publicly since her humiliating retreat, remaining secluded in her tower chambers. Prince Alexander stood in the council chamber, surrounded by maps and documents. Captain Morris, Lord Edmund, and other loyal nobles had gathered to discuss the kingdom's precarious situation. The Queen still commands the loyalty of approximately 200 personal guards, Captain Morris reported. They've fortified the North Tower and control the treasury. We've reached a stalemate. Lord Edmund stroked his gray beard thoughtfully. This division cannot continue. The people grow restless, and our enemies watch for signs of weakness. We need resolution. Alexander ran his hand through his hair, exhaustion evident on his face. He had barely slept since that fateful night, working tirelessly to maintain order and prevent the situation from escalating into civil war. "What word from Lord Blackwood's interrogation?" he asked. "He's revealed much, Your Highness," Captain Morris replied grimly. "The conspiracy against Princess Eleanor goes back years. He and the Queen planned to frame her from the moment you announced your engagement. There are documents, secret correspondence. The corruption runs deep." The door opened, and Elena entered, followed by Lady Catherine. The princess had thrown herself into helping the kingdom's people during this crisis, visiting families affected by the uncertainty and ensuring food supplies remained stable. "The market district remains calm," Elena reported. "The merchants have pledged their support. They remember how I helped negotiate fair trade agreements for them." Alexander's face softened as he looked at his wife. Even under such strain, she radiated grace and determination. "You should be resting, my love. You've been working without pause." "I can't rest while the kingdom suffers," Elena replied. "Besides, someone needs to show the people that we haven't abandoned them to political squabbles." Just then, a commotion arose outside. Shouting voices and the clatter of armor announced new arrivals. The doors burst open, and a messenger rushed in, falling to one knee. "Your Highness, Duke Marcus of Westford has arrived with 500 men. He demands to see the Queen and he's not alone. Lords Garrett and Stone have brought their forces as well. They claim to support the Queen's rightful rule." The room erupted in concerned voices. Duke Marcus was Queen Margot's cousin, a powerful noble with significant military strength. His arrival with armed forces could tip the balance dangerously. "How many men in total?" Alexander demanded. "Near 1,000, Your Highness. They're making camp outside the city walls." Elena placed a steadying hand on Alexander's arm. "This was planned. Your mother sent word to her supporters before the confrontation. She knew she might need military backing." "Then we must prepare our defenses," Captain Morris said. "The Royal Guard numbers 600, and the city militia—" "No," Elena interrupted firmly. "If we prepare for battle, battle is what we'll get. Thousands could die. There must be another way." Lord Edmund nodded approvingly. "The princess speaks wisely. Civil war would devastate Valdoria, regardless of who emerged victorious. "Then what would you have me do?" Alexander asked, frustration creeping into his voice. "My mother conspires with armed nobles while we speak of peace?" "We speak with Duke Marcus," Elena said. "He's known as an honorable man, despite his loyalty to your mother. Perhaps if he understood the truth of what happened, you would risk yourself as a negotiator?" Alexander's protective instincts flared. "After what nearly happened in the Great Hall?" "I would risk anything to prevent bloodshed," Elena replied. "Besides, I won't go alone. Lord Edmund's reputation is spotless. Duke Marcus respects him." Lord Edmund straightened his aged shoulders. "I would be honored to accompany the princess, Your Highness. Perhaps reason can still prevail." After much debate, it was decided. Elena and Lord Edmund would meet with Duke Marcus under a flag of truce. Alexander insisted on a heavy guard escort, though Elena argued it might send the wrong message. As they prepared to depart, a surprising visitor requested audience. Queen Margot's lady-in-waiting, Countess Vera, arrived secretly through servant passages. "Your Highnesses," she curtsied nervously, "I come at great risk. The Queen, she is not well. This conflict has broken something in her. She speaks to the late king's portrait for hours, swinging between rage and tears." "What does she plan?" Alexander asked urgently. "I'm not certain, but I heard her tell Duke Marcus's messenger that she would rather see the castle burn than surrender to the usurper. Your Highness, I've served your mother for 20 years, but this is madness. She needs help, not armies." Elena felt a wave of unexpected sympathy. "Is there no one who can reach her? No voice of reason she might hear?" "She trusts no one now," Countess Vera said sadly. "She sees conspiracies everywhere, even among her longest-serving attendants. Lord Blackwood fed her paranoia for years, and now it consumes her." After the Countess departed, Alexander pulled Elena aside. "This changes things. If my mother is truly unstable—" "Then she's more dangerous than ever," Elena finished, "but also more pitiable. She's a woman destroyed by her own hatred." "You're too forgiving," Alexander said, though his tone held admiration rather than criticism. "Perhaps. But someone must break this cycle of vengeance, or it will consume us all." The meeting with Duke Marcus took place in a silk pavilion erected in the field between the castle and the noble armies. The Duke was a large man with iron-gray hair and the bearing of a veteran soldier. His sharp eyes studied Elena with curiosity rather than hostility. "So," he rumbled, "you're the princess who has my cousin in such turmoil. You're younger than I expected." "Youth and wisdom aren't mutually exclusive, Your Grace," Elena replied calmly. "Just as age doesn't guarantee good judgment." Duke Marcus's lips twitched in what might have been amusement. "Boldly spoken. I see why young Alexander is so taken with you. Now, let's dispense with pleasantries. Queen Margot has called upon her blood and allies to restore proper order. She claims you're a traitor who has bewitched her son." Lord Edmund leaned forward. "Duke Marcus, you're known as a man of honor. Would an honorable man condemn someone without examining evidence, without hearing their defense?" "I've heard the Queen's version of events," the Duke replied. "She says you conspired with enemies, that letters prove your treachery." "Forged letters," Elena said firmly. "Lord Blackwood has confessed to creating them. The merchant he paid to lie has recanted. Every piece of evidence crumbles under scrutiny." She proceeded to lay out the truth of what had occurred, speaking with such sincerity and clarity that even hardened soldiers in the Duke's retinue found themselves listening intently. Lord Edmund supported her account with his own observations of the Queen's increasing paranoia and Lord Blackwood's manipulations. Duke Marcus listened in silence, his expression growing more troubled with each revelation. When Elena finished, He stood and walked to the pavilion's entrance, staring at the castle where he had visited so many times in happier days. "I remember when Margot married King Theodore," he said quietly. "She was full of life then, full of hope. Power changed her, especially after his death. She became convinced everyone wanted to steal what was hers." "Power didn't change her," Elena said gently. "Fear did. Fear of losing control, fear of being replaced, fear that her son's love for someone else meant he loved her less." The Duke turned to study her again. "You pity her, even after she tried to destroy you." "I pity anyone whose heart is so consumed by darkness that they can't see the light offered to them. She could have had a daughter in me, someone to love and support her. Instead, she chose to see an enemy." "Pretty words," Duke Marcus said, though not unkindly. "But words won't resolve this crisis. Margot has promised lands and titles to lords who support her. Lord Garrett expects to become Chancellor. Lord Stone wants control of the eastern trade routes. What can you offer to counter such promises?" "Justice," Elena replied simply. "Stability. A kingdom where merit matters more than scheming, where laws protect everyone equally. I can't promise wealth stolen from the treasury or positions gained through favoritism. I can only promise that Valdoria, under Alexander's rule, will be fair and prosperous for all." Duke Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, "What of Queen Margot? If she refuses to yield, what becomes of her?" "She remains Alexander's mother," Elena said. "If she would accept peace, she could live comfortably in any of the royal estates. Her title, her dignity, her safety, all would be preserved. We seek reconciliation, not revenge." Lord Edmund added, "Consider the alternative, Duke. If this comes to battle, hundreds will die. The kingdom will be weakened, perhaps fatally. Our enemies in Ravencia and beyond will exploit our division. Is supporting Margot's vendetta worth such a price?" Duke Marcus returned to his seat, his weathered face showing the weight of decision. "I need time to think, and I need to speak with Lords Garrett and Stone. They're less inclined to diplomacy than I am." "We understand," Elena said. "But please, think quickly. Every hour that passes increases the chance of violence erupting." As they prepared to leave, Duke Marcus called out, "Princess Elena, one more question. If Queen Margot ordered her guards to attack the city to harm innocent people to force your surrender, what would you do?" Elena met his gaze steadily. "I would stand between her soldiers and the innocent, Your Grace. A true princess protects her people." "Whatever the cost." The Duke nodded slowly. "I believe you would. That tells me much." Back at the castle, the waiting was agony. Alexander paced like a caged lion while receiving reports from scouts. Some of Duke Marcus's soldiers had been seen talking with royal guards at the walls, possibly feeling out loyalties or preparing for assault. Then, as night fell, chaos erupted. Fire broke out in the eastern merchant quarter, not accidental, but deliberately set. As citizens rushed to fight the flames, Queen Margot's personal guards emerged from hidden positions, attempting to seize the main gates. "It's a diversion!" Captain Morris shouted. "They mean to let Duke Marcus's forces into the city!" Alexander didn't hesitate. "All guards to defensive positions! Protect the citizens first. Get them away from the fires." In the confusion, Elena spotted something others missed. A group of Margot's guards heading not for the gates, but for the orphanage she had founded. Her blood ran cold as she realized the Queen's cruel strategy. "Alexander!" She grabbed her husband's arm. "The orphanage! She means to take hostages!" The prince's face went white with rage. "Using children as shields? Has she truly fallen so far?" Without waiting for guards to organize, Elena hiked up her skirts and ran toward the orphanage. Alexander followed, sword already in hand, with only a handful of guards able to keep pace. They arrived just as Margot's soldiers were forcing their way inside. Children's terrified screams pierced the night. Elena didn't think. She threw herself between the soldiers and the orphanage door. "Stop!" she commanded. "How dare you threaten children? Have you no honor left?" The lead soldier sneered. "Stand aside, princess. The queen wants leverage, and these brats will serve nicely." "You'll have to go through me first," Elena declared, spreading her arms to block the entrance. The soldier raised his hand to strike her, but Alexander's sword was suddenly at his throat. "Touch her and die," the prince growled, every word dripping menace. More royal guards arrived, surrounding the would-be kidnappers. Faced with real opposition, the queen's soldiers surrendered quickly. They were not monsters, just men following orders. Orders that had finally crossed a line even they couldn't justify. Inside the orphanage, Elena comforted terrified children while Alexander organized protection for all vulnerable locations in the city. The attempted hostage-taking had backfired spectacularly, turning even more people against Queen Margot. Duke Marcus himself arrived at the castle gates under a peace banner, his face grim. "I've come to speak with Prince Alexander," he announced. "What I've witnessed tonight changes everything." In the throne room, Duke Marcus stood before Alexander and Elena, his soldiers bearing rigid with controlled anger. "Using children as pawns," he said, disgust evident in every word. "I came here to support my cousin, but this is beyond the pale. No cause justifies such tactics." "What of Lords Garrett and Stone?" Alexander asked. "Still determined to profit from chaos," Duke Marcus admitted. "But many of their soldiers share my revulsion. Threaten children? Attack the innocent? This isn't war, it's barbarity." Elena stepped forward. "Help us end this, Your Grace. Your voice carries weight. Together we can prevent further bloodshed." Duke Marcus was silent for a moment, then knelt before them. "I pledge my sword to the rightful rulers of Valdoria. Margot has lost her way, and I'll no longer enable her madness." His defection triggered a cascade. Soldiers who had come to support the queen began questioning their orders. Lords who had hoped for profit realized the tide had turned. By dawn, Lords Garrett and Stone found their forces melting away, men unwilling to fight for a cause tainted by attacks on children. But Queen Margot, isolated in her tower, refused to accept defeat. As the sun rose, she appeared on the highest balcony, dressed in full royal regalia. "Traitors!" Her voice, magically amplified, echoed across the city. "You abandon your rightful queen for a pretender, a common-born witch who has corrupted my son." Alexander and Elena emerged onto a lower balcony where the gathered crowd could see them. The prince's voice rang out clear and strong. "Mother, enough. Your schemes have failed. Your own actions have turned the kingdom against you. Surrender with dignity, and mercy will be shown." "Mercy?" Queen Margot laughed wildly. "From the son who drew steel against his mother? From the harlot who stole my throne?" Elena stepped forward, and her voice carried surprising strength. "I stole nothing, Your Majesty. I only loved your son and tried to serve this kingdom. The throne was never mine to take, but neither is it yours to keep through tyranny and fear." The crowd below murmured agreement. They had seen Elena's compassion, witnessed her courage. They had also seen the queen's descent into cruelty. "You want the truth?" Queen Margot shrieked. "Yes, I forged those letters. Yes, I planned to destroy you. You took my son. You turned my court against me. Everything I built, you corrupted with your peasant ways." The confession, shouted in rage, sealed her fate. Even her remaining supporters couldn't defend admitted treason and false accusations. Lord Edmund, his aged voice carrying wisdom's weight, called out, "Your Majesty, you have confessed to crimes against the crown and kingdom. By law you must face judgment. Surrender peacefully, and the court will show compassion for your years of service." Compassion? Queen Margot's laughter had an edge of hysteria. I need no compassion from traitors and fools. She turned to retreat into the tower, but found her own guards blocking the way. Even they had heard enough. Captain of her personal guard, Sir Roderick, stood firm. Your Majesty, he said formally but not unkindly, by order of the Crown Prince and the Royal Council, you are under arrest. Please, don't make this harder than necessary. For a moment it seemed Queen Margot might order them to fight. Her eyes blazed with the old imperious fire. Then, suddenly, all the fight went out of her. She aged 10 years in an instant, becoming a broken woman rather than a wrathful queen. Arrested by my own guards, she whispered. The final betrayal. As they led her away, Elena felt no triumph, only sadness. She turned to Alexander, who watched his mother's departure with conflicted emotions playing across his face. I'm sorry, she said softly. I know how hard this must be. She brought it on herself, Alexander replied, though his voice was thick with unshed tears. But she's still my mother. Despite everything, I can't help but remember the woman she used to be. Duke Marcus approached them, having organized the peaceful dispersal of the remaining opposition forces. Your Highnesses, the immediate crisis has passed, but the kingdom needs healing. What are your orders? Alexander straightened, assuming the mantle of leadership. First, we ensure all citizens are safe and the fires are fully extinguished. Then we begin the work of reunification. No reprisals against those who supported my mother. They were following their oath of loyalty, however misguided. Elena added, We'll need to address the grievances that allowed this division to grow. Duke Marcus, would you lead a council to hear from all parts of the kingdom? Your reputation for fairness would serve us well. The Duke bowed. It would be my honor, Your Highness. As the sun climbed higher, painting the castle in golden light, the kingdom of Valdoria began to heal. The dramatic confrontation that had nearly torn it apart would be remembered as the night Prince Alexander drew his sword to defend justice and love against tyranny and hate. In the days that followed, Queen Margot was confined to comfortable quarters in the summer palace. Attended by loyal servants and physicians who cared for both her body and troubled mind, Alexander visited daily, sometimes finding his mother lucid and remorseful, other times lost in bitter fantasies. Elena accompanied him once, despite his protests. Queen Margot looked at her former nemesis with eyes that held a mixture of emotions too complex to name. You won, the fallen queen said simply. No one won, Elena replied gently. We all lost something in this conflict. But perhaps in time we can rebuild what was broken. Queen Margot turned away. Pretty words from a pretty princess. You'll learn eventually that power corrupts everyone, even you. Perhaps, Elena acknowledged, but I have something you pushed away. People who love me enough to tell me when I'm wrong. That makes all the difference. As they left, Queen Margot called out, Take care of my son, Elena. Whatever else, take care of him. Always, Elena promised. The coronation of King Alexander and Queen Elena took place 3 months later, on a perfect spring day. The ceremony was attended by nobles and commoners alike, a symbol of the United Kingdom they intended to build. Duke Marcus stood as Lord Protector, helping guide the transition. Lord Edmund headed the new Royal Council, dedicated to just governance. Captain Morris, promoted to Lord Commander, reformed the Royal Guard to prevent future divisions. But perhaps the most moving moment came when Father Benedict asked if anyone objected to the coronation. A hush fell over the cathedral as all remembered the last time such drama had unfolded. Then, from the summer palace, a letter arrived, Queen Margot's seal upon it. Alexander's hands shook as he opened it, reading aloud. Let it be known that I, Margot of Valdoria, recognize the lawful ascension of my son Alexander and his wife Elena to the throne. May they rule with the wisdom I lacked, and the compassion I forgot. A mother's blessing, however late, upon them both. There wasn't a dry eye in the cathedral. Elena felt Alexander's hand squeeze hers as Father Benedict completed the ceremony, placing crowns upon their heads. As they emerged to greet their people, the cheers were deafening. The kingdom had survived its darkest hour and emerged stronger. The story of the night a prince drew his sword to defend his beloved against false accusations would be told for generations, growing into legend. But for Alexander and Elena, it was simply the beginning of their reign, a reign built on love, justice, and the hard-won understanding that power without compassion becomes tyranny, while compassion without power cannot protect those who need it most. Lord Blackwood faced trial for his crimes, revealing years of corruption and manipulation. His testimony showed how he had fed Queen Margot's paranoia, profiting from her increasing isolation. He was sentenced to exile, his properties distributed among those he had wronged. The orphanage Elena had protected became a symbol of the new reign. Expanded and improved, it stood as testament to the belief that a kingdom's strength lay not in its armies or treasuries, but in how it cared for its most vulnerable. Duke Marcus, true to his word, led efforts to heal the kingdom's divisions. His council traveled to every province, listening to grievances and implementing reforms. The heavy-handed policies of Queen Margot's later years were replaced with fair laws that balanced tradition with progress. On quiet evenings, Alexander and Elena would walk the castle battlements, looking out over their peaceful kingdom. The memory of that terrible night, the drawn swords, the false accusations, the moment when civil war seemed inevitable, served as a constant reminder of how quickly fear and hatred could destroy what generations had built. "Do you ever regret it?" Alexander asked one evening. "The simple life you could have had if you'd never met me?" Elena laughed, a sound like silver bells. "How could I regret the path that led me to you, to this chance to make a real difference? Even knowing the pain it caused, the danger you faced? Especially knowing that," Elena said firmly. "Easy paths rarely lead to meaningful destinations. We were tested by fire and emerged stronger." In the summer palace, Queen Margot tended her garden, finding in its simple rhythms a peace that had eluded her for years. Sometimes she received visitors, old friends who remembered her better days, grandchildren when Alexander and Elena's family grew. She never returned to court, but in her lucid moments, she wrote letters to Alexander, apologizing for the mother she failed to be, to Elena, acknowledging the daughter she refused to see, to the kingdom, expressing regret for the pain her blindness caused. Not all were ready to forgive, but time softened hard feelings. The woman who had nearly destroyed Valdoria became a cautionary tale, but also a reminder that redemption remained possible for even the most lost souls. Years later, when bards sang of King Alexander the Just and Queen Elena the Compassionate, they always included the night of the confrontation. How a prince's love proved stronger than a mother's hate. How truth prevailed over lies. How a kingdom chose unity over division. But those who lived through it remembered smaller moments too. Elena standing between soldiers and orphans, Alexander's tears as his mother was arrested, Duke Marcus choosing honor over family loyalty, common guards refusing unlawful orders. These human moments, more than grand gestures, showed how ordinary people making extraordinary choices could change history's course. The night Prince Alexander drew his sword to defend Princess Elena marked not just a personal victory, but a kingdom's transformation. And in the great hall where it all began, a new portrait hung, not of a single monarch ruling through fear, but of a king and queen standing together, hands clasped, faces turned not toward the painter, but toward the window, where their people lived and worked in peace. The inscription below read simply, "Love conquers fear, justice conquers tyranny, Unity conquers division. Let all who rule remember. Thus ended the dark chapter of Queen Margot's final years, and began the golden age of Alexander and Elena's reign, proving that even in the darkest moments, when swords are drawn and accusations fly, love and truth can still prevail over hatred and lies. 5 years had passed since the dramatic night when Prince Alexander drew his sword to defend Princess Elena. The kingdom of Valdoria had flourished under their rule, transforming from a realm divided by fear and suspicion into one united by justice and compassion. Yet the past had a way of casting long shadows, and some wounds took longer to heal than others. King Alexander stood in his study, examining reports from the kingdom's borders. The morning light illuminated the silver threading through his dark hair. Premature, some said, from the stresses of that tumultuous time. His trusted advisor, Duke Marcus, sat across from him, pointing to troubling intelligence. "The Brotherhood of the Black Rose grows bolder," Duke Marcus said gravely. "Lord Blackwood may be in exile, but his supporters haven't forgotten their lost power." Alexander frowned. "How many?" "Perhaps 200 malcontents, Your Majesty. Former guards dismissed for corruption, merchants who profited from the old system, nobles who lost positions they'd gained through scheming rather than merit. And their goal? Restoration of the old ways. They speak of your mother as the true queen and spread lies about Queen Elena. They claim she's a witch who enchanted you, that the kingdom suffers under her common influence." Alexander's jaw tightened. Despite the years, any threat to Elena still ignited his protective instincts. "What do they plan?" "Our spies report they're gathering funds, recruiting desperate men, spreading sedition in taverns and markets. But there's more." Duke Marcus hesitated. "They claim to have contacted Queen Margot, seeking her blessing for their cause." The king's face went pale. His mother, confined to the summer palace, had shown signs of improvement. Her letters had become more coherent, her remorse seemingly genuine. Had it all been an act? "Send word to Captain Morris," Alexander commanded. "Double the guard at the summer palace, and summon Queen Elena. She needs to know about this threat." Queen Elena was in the castle's great library, surrounded by children from various social classes. Her revolutionary education program brought noble and common children together, teaching them to see past traditional divisions. She was reading them a story when Lady Catherine, now her chief lady-in-waiting, whispered urgent news. Elena's expression didn't change. She'd learned to mask concern in public, but she concluded the story quickly and made her way to Alexander's study. The children's disappointed voices followed her, begging for one more chapter. "I'll return tomorrow," she promised with a warm smile that hid her growing worry. In the study, Alexander briefed her on the Brotherhood's activities. Elena listened calmly, though her hands clenched in her lap. "They still blame me for everything," she said softly. 5 years of peace, prosperity, and progress, yet they cling to their hatred. "Their hatred stems from loss of privilege, not principle," Duke Marcus observed. "Under the old system, birth and connections mattered more than ability. Now merchants' sons can rise to prominence, and lords who contributed nothing but their names find themselves irrelevant." "What troubles me more is Mother's potential involvement," Alexander said. "If she's orchestrating this from the summer palace—" Elena placed a gentle hand on her husband's arm. "We don't know that she is. The Brotherhood might be using her name without permission. We need facts before we act." Just then, urgent knocking interrupted them. A travel-stained messenger entered bearing the royal seal of Raventia. "Your Majesties," he panted, bowing hastily. "King Marcus sends urgent word. Lord Blackwood has been spotted in our border city of Thornwatch, meeting with known smugglers and mercenaries. Our agents believe he plans to return to Valdoria." The room fell silent. Lord Blackwood's exile had been merciful. Many had called for his execution after his role in the conspiracy was revealed. His return would violate the terms of his banishment, punishable by death. He must be desperate, Elena mused, or very confident. What could give him such boldness? Before anyone could answer, another interruption, this time from Father Benedict, now elderly but still serving as royal chaplain. His usually calm face showed deep concern. Your Majesties, forgive the intrusion, but I've just come from the Summer Palace. Queen Dowager Margot urgently requests to see you both. She says she has vital information about a plot against the crown. Alexander and Elena exchanged glances. Was this a trap or genuine warning? She seemed quite agitated, Father Benedict continued. Almost frightened. I've never seen her thus, not even during her arrest. After quick deliberation, they decided to go immediately, taking a strong guard contingent led by Captain Morris himself. The journey to the Summer Palace took 3 hours, during which Alexander's tension grew visibly. The last time I saw her this upset was the night I drew my sword, he said quietly to Elena. What if this is another manipulation? Then we'll handle it as we did before, Elena replied firmly. With truth and courage. The Summer Palace, a beautiful structure of white marble and flowering gardens, seemed peaceful in the afternoon sun. But the guards reported strange incidents. Unknown men had been spotted in the nearby woods, and several messages had arrived for the Queen Dowager from unnamed sources. They found Queen Margot in her sitting room, and Alexander barely recognized his mother. The years of confinement had aged her, yes, but more striking was the absence of her former imperial bearing. She looked vulnerable, almost fragile. Alexander, Elena, she said, rising shakily. Thank God you've come. I didn't know if my message would reach you in time. Mother, Alexander said carefully. What's this about? Queen Margot moved to her writing desk, producing several letters with trembling hands. These began arriving a month ago. At first I thought them the ravings of malcontents, but they've become more specific, more threatening. Elena examined the letters. They bore no seal, but were written in an educated hand. The content made her blood chill. Your Majesty's rightful place awaits. The usurpers will fall before month's end. Your loyal servants stand ready to restore proper order. They claim to act in my name, Queen Margot said, genuine distress in her voice. They speak of violence, of assassinations, of purges that would make my worst excesses seem mild. I may have been a fool, consumed by jealousy and fear, but I was never a monster. What they propose is monstrous. Alexander studied his mother intently. Why warn us? You could have remained silent. Let their plan unfold. Queen Margot's eyes filled with tears, the first Elena had ever seen from her. Because I've had 5 years to think, 5 years to realize what my hatred nearly cost us all. I see children playing in my garden sometimes, common and noble together, and I think, that's Elena's doing. That's the future she's building. She turned to Elena directly. I hated you because you represented change, because you made my son love someone more than me. But hatred is exhausting, child. And in my solitude, I've finally seen what everyone else saw. You love him truly, and you've made him a better king than I ever allowed him to be as a prince. Elena felt tears prick her own eyes, but remained silent, allowing the older woman to continue. Last week, a man came in secret. I recognized him, Sir Roderick, who once captained my personal guard. He knelt before me and said, the Brotherhood awaited my word to strike. He spoke of killing you, Elena, making it look like an accident, of forcing Alexander to marry someone more suitable, of ruling through him as regent. Alexander's hand moved instinctively to where his sword would hang. What did you tell him? I told him I was an old woman who wanted only peace. He didn't believe me. He said the Brotherhood would act with or without my blessing, but having it would ease their path. When I refused, he threatened. She pulled back her sleeve, revealing dark bruises on her arm. He said if I wouldn't lead, I could serve as a symbol, willing or not. Elena gasped, moving forward instinctively. Your Majesty, we must have those wounds treated properly. Queen Margot looked surprised at the genuine concern. You would care for my well-being after everything? You're Alexander's mother, Elena said simply. And you're trying to do right. That's all that matters now. Captain Morris, who had been listening from the doorway, stepped forward. Your Majesties, this confirms our intelligence. The Brotherhood plans something significant, and soon. With Lord Blackwood returning and these threats to the Queen Dowager, we must act decisively. What do you know of their specific plans? Alexander asked his mother. Sir Roderick let slip that they have someone inside the castle, someone close to you both. He said when the signal comes, you'll never see the blade until it's too late. The journey back to the castle was tense. Alexander had insisted his mother accompany them for her safety, despite her protests. She rode in a closed carriage with Elena, while Alexander rode alongside with the guards. This is strange, Queen Margot said softly. Being protected by those I once saw as enemies. We were never your enemies, Your Majesty, Elena replied. We only wanted peace and justice. I know that now. Fear makes us see threats where none exist. She paused. That night, when Alexander drew his sword, I've replayed it thousands of times. The fury in his eyes, the way he stood before you. I realized then I'd lost him. But it took years to understand I'd lost him long before, when I chose fear over love. Their conversation was interrupted by shouts from outside. The carriage lurched to a halt. Through the window, Elena could see armed men emerging from the forest, dozens of them wearing black roses pinned to their cloaks. Brotherhood! Captain Morris shouted. Defensive positions! Alexander's voice rang clear. Protect the carriage! The attack was swift and coordinated. The Brotherhood had chosen their ambush site well, a narrow pass between rocky hills, limiting the Royal Guard's mobility. Elena heard the clash of steel, the shouts of combat. They knew our route, Queen Margot whispered. The spy in the castle. Elena's mind raced. Who had known their exact path? Only the most trusted. A face appeared at the carriage window. Sir Roderick, his scarred visage twisted with triumph. Your Majesties, he mocked. How convenient to find you both here. Surrender, and I promise, quick deaths. Never, Elena said firmly. Then we'll take you by force. Men, break down the doors. As Brotherhood soldiers surrounded the carriage, Elena made a desperate decision. She flung open the opposite door. Your Majesty, we must run. But Queen Margot shook her head. I'm too old and slow. I'll only hinder you. Go. We won't leave you. You will. The steel in Queen Margot's voice reminded Elena of the imperious woman she'd once been. My whole life, I've made the wrong choices. Let me make the right one now. Go. Before Elena could protest further, Queen Margot pushed her out of the carriage and slammed the door. Then, in a voice that carried across the battlefield, she announced, I am Queen Dowager Margot of Valdoria. Any who wish to claim me must go through me first. The Brotherhood soldiers hesitated, confused. This wasn't in their plan. Queen Margot emerged from the carriage, every inch the royal she'd always been. You claim to act in my name? She demanded of Sir Roderick. You dare threaten my son's wife, my daughter-in-law? Your Majesty, Sir Roderick stammered. We fight for you, to restore. You fight for yourselves, Queen Margot interrupted. For your greed and ambition. You use my name to justify treason. Her distraction gave the royal guards time to regroup. Alexander, seeing Elena out of immediate danger, fought with renewed fury. His sword moved in deadly arcs, cutting through enemies who threatened his family. Captain Morris led a charge that broke the Brotherhood's eastern flank. Duke Marcus, who had accompanied them with his own men, struck from the west. The ambushers found themselves caught between two forces, but Sir Roderick, desperate now, grabbed Queen Margot. "Stand down, or the old woman dies!" Alexander froze, sword raised. Around him, the battle stilled as both sides watched the standoff. "Don't stop for me," Queen Margot commanded. "I'm not worth the kingdom." "You're my mother," Alexander said simply. "You're worth everything." Elena, who had circled behind during the chaos, saw her chance. The self-defense training Alexander had insisted on after the first crisis served her now. She struck Sir Roderick's knee from behind, causing him to stumble and release his hostage. In that moment of opportunity, Alexander moved. His sword found its mark, and Sir Roderick fell, the black rose on his cloak staining red. Seeing their leader fall, the remaining Brotherhood fighters lost heart. Some fled into the forest, others threw down their weapons in surrender. The ambush had failed, turned into a trap for the ambushers. As guards secured prisoners and tended wounded, Alexander found his mother sitting on a roadside stone, Elena beside her, holding a cloth to a cut on the older woman's forehead. "You saved us," he said wonderingly. "Your warning, your distraction during the fight." "I owed you both that much," Queen Margot replied weakly. "And more besides." "We need to get back to the castle," Captain Morris urged. "There may be more Brotherhood members waiting." But as they prepared to move, a rider approached at full gallop, Lord Edmund's personal messenger. "Your Majesties, Lord Edmund sends urgent word. The spy has been discovered. It's Lord Garrett. He moves against the castle even now with Brotherhood supporters within the guard," Alexander cursed. Lord Garrett, one of the nobles who'd initially supported Queen Margot, had been allowed to retain a position in court as a gesture of reconciliation. That mercy had been repaid with betrayal. "How many men does he have?" Alexander demanded. "Perhaps 50, Your Majesty. But they hold the throne room and have taken hostages, including the children from Queen Elena's education program." Elena went white. Those innocent children used as pawns again. The echo of the orphanage incident years ago was too painful. "We ride hard," Alexander commanded. "Leave wounded and prisoners under guard. Everyone else with me." The race back to the castle was desperate. Lathered horses and exhausted riders pushed beyond limits, knowing lives hung in the balance. Queen Margot, despite protests, insisted on coming. "This is my fault too," she said. "I gave men like Garrett the idea that power could be seized through force and fear." As the castle came into view, they could see smoke rising from the western tower. The main gate stood open, a bad sign suggesting the defenders had been overwhelmed or betrayed from within. They entered cautiously, finding loyal guards locked in combat with Brotherhood sympathizers. The palace had become a battlefield, with skirmishes in corridors and courtyards. "The throne room!" Captain Morris pointed to where the fighting seemed fiercest. They fought their way through, Alexander and his guards cutting a path while Elena coordinated with arriving reinforcements. Queen Margot, despite her age, grabbed a fallen guard's crossbow and proved she hadn't forgotten her youthful training. Outside the throne room's great doors, they found a standoff. Lord Garrett's voice carried through. "I hold 30 children and their teachers. Approach and they die." Alexander's face was stone, but Elena saw his hands tremble. Those children trusted them, looked up to them. To have them threatened again. "Garrett," Alexander called. "Release the children. Your quarrel is with me." "My quarrel is with the corruption of this kingdom. Common children learning beside nobles. Merchants' daughters thinking themselves equal to ancient bloodlines. Your peasant queen has poisoned everything." Elena stepped forward. "Then take me. A straight exchange. Me for all the hostages." "No!" Alexander grabbed her arm. I won't allow it. You won't allow? Elena's eyes flashed. I'm not asking permission. Those children are my responsibility too, Queen Margot interrupted, stepping past them both. Lord Garrett, this is Margot speaking. Open these doors. Surprise at hearing the Queen Dowager's voice caused a pause. The doors cracked open, revealing the throne room transformed into a nightmare. Children huddled in groups, some crying, while armed men stood guard. Lord Garrett stood before the throne he'd once dreamed of controlling. Your Majesty, his face lit with false joy. You've come to reclaim. I've come to end this madness, Queen Margot said, walking forward with regal bearing despite her injuries. You act in my name? Then hear my command. Release these children immediately. But they said you supported our cause, that you wanted the old ways restored. The old ways died the night my son drew his sword in this very hall, Queen Margot replied, and good riddance to them. They were built on fear, jealousy, and lies. These children represent Valdoria's future, a better future than I ever imagined. She turned, addressing the Brotherhood members who watched uncertainly. You followed me once. Follow me now. Lay down your arms. Accept the mercy King Alexander offers, or continue this folly and face the consequences. The moral authority in her voice, the voice that had once commanded absolute obedience, had its effect. Weapons lowered. Men looked at each other uncertainly. Lord Garrett, seeing his support crumbling, grew desperate. He grabbed a young girl, Maria, daughter of a baker who'd shown remarkable intelligence in Elena's programs. Stay back! He pressed a dagger to the child's throat. I'll not hang for trying to save the kingdom from corruption. Time seemed to slow. Alexander's hand went to his sword, but he was too far away. Elena stood frozen, reliving the orphanage attack, but Queen Margot continued walking forward calmly, steadily. You know, Garrett, she said conversationally, I once believed as you do. That blood determined worth. That tradition mattered more than justice. Do you know what changed my mind? She was close now, almost within arm's reach. Garrett watched her warily, confused by her casual tone. This child could grow up to discover great things, to lead with wisdom, to make our kingdom proud. Or she could die here now, for nothing more than your wounded pride. Which legacy would you choose? The kingdom needs her, Queen Margot said firmly. And all children like her. The kingdom needs hope, not hatred. Love, not fear. Put down the blade, Garrett. Choose redemption while you still can. For a moment, the throne room held its breath. Then, slowly, Lord Garrett's hand opened. The dagger fell with a clatter that seemed to echo forever. Maria ran to Elena's arms, sobbing with relief. The remaining Brotherhood members surrendered without further resistance. As guards secured them, Queen Margot suddenly swayed. Alexander caught her as she fell, her strength finally exhausted. Mother! I'm all right, she whispered, though her face was pale. Just tired, so very tired. But I had to make things right. Elena knelt beside them, checking Queen Margot's injuries with gentle hands. You did make things right. You saved those children. You saved us all. Queen Margot's eyes focused on Elena with difficulty. I spent so many years hating you. What a waste. You would have been such a wonderful daughter. I still can be, Elena said softly, tears flowing freely now. If you'll let me. The older woman smiled, a genuine warm smile that transformed her face. I would like that. Very much. In the days that followed, the Brotherhood of the Black Rose was thoroughly broken. Lord Blackwood, attempting to cross the border, was captured and faced final justice. Other conspirators were tried fairly, with mercy shown to those who genuinely repented. Queen Margot, weakened by her ordeal but strengthened in spirit, chose to remain at the castle rather than return to the summer palace. She spent her time with the children she'd helped save, discovering joy in their laughter and curiosity. "I was wrong about everything," she told Alexander and Elena one evening as they sat together in the garden. "Power isn't about commanding obedience. It's about inspiring loyalty. You two understand that. The people follow you not because they must, but because they choose to." Her health, already fragile, had been damaged by the stress and injuries of recent events. Physicians spoke quietly of months, perhaps a year, but Queen Margot faced this news with surprising peace. "I've been given a gift," she said. "Time to know my true family, to see my grandchildren grow, to watch the kingdom flourish under wise rule. Many who live long lives have less." Indeed, the time that followed was precious. Queen Margot became a fixture in the castle's daily life. No longer the tyrant queen, but a grandmother figure who told stories to children and offered hard-won wisdom to those who sought it. She and Elena grew particularly close, the younger woman's compassion finally breaking through years of bitter defenses. They would often be found together in the library or garden, talking of everything from statecraft to favorite flowers. "I wish we'd had this from the beginning," Queen Margot said one afternoon. "We have it now," Elena replied. "That's what matters." When Lord Blackwood's trial came, revealing the full extent of how he'd manipulated Queen Margot's fears and prejudices for his own gain, she testified with unwavering honesty about her own failings and his exploitation of them. "I was a willing participant in my own deception," she told the court. "But that doesn't absolve him of feeding my worst impulses for profit and power." The trial's revelations shocked many, showing how deeply corruption had run in the old system. It strengthened support for Alexander and Elena's reforms, proving the need for change. One evening, as snow began to fall on Valdoria, Queen Margot called her family together: Alexander, Elena, and their young children, Prince Theodore and Princess Margaret, gathered in her chambers. "I have something to say," she began, her voice weaker now but still clear. "Something I should have said long ago. Alexander, my son, I'm proud of you, proud of the king you've become. Your father would be too." Alexander knelt beside her chair, taking her frail hands in his. "Mother, Elena," Queen Margot continued, "forgive a foolish old woman's pride. You've been the daughter I never had, the queen I should have been. Thank you for your patience, your forgiveness, your love." Elena was crying openly now, holding young Margaret while Theodore clung to her skirts. "And you, little ones," Queen Margot smiled at her grandchildren, "remember always that true nobility comes from here." She touched her heart. "Not from blood or titles. Be kind, be just, be brave. That's all that matters." As winter deepened, Queen Margot's strength faded, but her spirit seemed to grow brighter, as if preparing for a journey. She spent her last days surrounded by love, the love she'd rejected for so long, now embracing her like warm sunlight. On her final morning, with Alexander holding one hand and Elena the other, she whispered, "That night, when you drew your sword, I thought I'd lost everything. But I was wrong. That's when I began to find what truly mattered." She passed peacefully, a smile on her face, finally at peace with herself and the world. The kingdom mourned Queen Margot not as the tyrant she'd been, but as the woman she'd become. Her transformation from hatred to love, from fear to acceptance, became a powerful symbol of redemption's possibility. At her funeral, Elena spoke movingly. "She taught us that it's never too late to change, never too late to choose love over hate, forgiveness over vengeance." In her final years, she showed more courage than in all her years of power, the courage to admit wrong, to seek redemption, to love without condition. The Brotherhood of the Black Rose faded into history, its members either reformed or exiled. The kingdom prospered under just rule, with former divisions healing as new generations grew up together, learning side by side regardless of birth. Alexander commissioned a new portrait for the throne room, not of power and authority, but of family. It showed him and Eleanor with their children, and yes, Queen Margot too, painted from memory, but capturing her final years' warmth rather than her earlier coldness. Young Prince Theodore, studying history with his tutors, once asked, "Why did grandmother try to hurt mother?" Elena, now showing the wisdom that comes with experience, answered gently, "Fear makes people do terrible things, my love. Your grandmother was afraid of losing what she loved, and that fear twisted into hatred. But in the end, love conquered fear. It always does, if we give it time." Is that why Father drew his sword that night? Because love conquered fear? "Yes," Alexander said, entering the room. "I drew my sword to protect what I loved. But the real victory came later, when we chose forgiveness over vengeance, when your grandmother chose redemption over pride." As years passed, the story of that dramatic night became legend, told in taverns and palaces alike. But those who lived it knew the truth was both simpler and more complex than any ballad could capture. It was the story of human hearts, capable of great cruelty, but also great change, of love that endures through trials, of courage found in unexpected places, of redemption offered and accepted. The kingdom of Valdoria stood strong, its foundation built not on fear and tradition, but on justice and compassion. And in the throne room, where swords had once been drawn in anger, children now learned together, their laughter echoing off ancient stones that had witnessed both humanity's worst and best. King Alexander and Queen Elena ruled long and well, their love story inspiring generations. But they never forgot the lesson learned that fateful night, that power without love becomes tyranny, while love with courage can transform even the hardest hearts. In the royal cemetery, Queen Margot's tomb bore a simple inscription: "She chose love at last." Fresh flowers appeared there regularly, placed by former enemies who had become family, by children she'd helped save, by a kingdom that remembered not just her failures, but her final triumph. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, Elena would stand before that tomb and whisper, "Thank you, Mother, for showing us that it's never too late to change." The wind would carry her words away, but the truth of them remained, carved not in stone, but in the hearts of all who remembered the night when drawn swords led not to bloodshed, but to transformation, when a kingdom chose its future, and when love, at long last, conquered all.